Okay, as always, I want to welcome you to the show. And as always, I have an outstanding guest. So let me give you a little bit of background. You know, there's an old saying that says nothing happens till somebody sells somebody something. And that takes high relational skills. My guest today is no exception. He is absolutely and always has done it right. Simon Lawrie is a highly accomplished manufacturing executive that's focused on results that exceeds expectations. And now Simon comes to us from Houston as president of Vulcan Industrial. And he really is the epitome of a leader who's doing it right. Stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
So, I want to welcome you, Simon Lawrie, to the show.
Thank you. Super happy to be here, Valerie. Sounds good.
I'm glad you took time out because I started to say, as we talked in our pre-interview, here's what I appreciated, and I want the audience to know this. And it has to do with everything about your brand, at least what I know from someone that works closely with you. And that's one of being totally relational and approachable, somebody that believes in coaching, and that's how you work with your team. And also someone who's precise. That last word, precise, how does that hit you?
Well, precision is a all-telling word, really, in many ways. We have an engineering and manufacturing company that deals with some of the most extreme duty pump applications in the world. Mm-hmm. And precise is everything from how you analyze data to the decisions you make based on data and information, and just being clear about the goals, the objectives, and then measuring those in a precise way.
Mm-hmm. I would love for you to explain what Vulcan does. Just give us the dumbed-down version for people like me who have 12-year-old minds.
Okay. To kind of frame what we do, we're an engineering and manufacturing company with 8 locations in North America, 1 in Canada, the rest here in the U.S. And we design, manufacture, and service primarily products for the oil field. And if you ever heard of the term fracking, our pumps actually are the primary enabler for fracking to be a process. So we take water, sand, and some other constituents, pump it down whole, miles down into the earth, and actually fracture the shale rock, allowing for oil and natural gas to seep up into the pipe. And then it's collected and processed at refineries and ultimately to heat your homes, to manufacture pharmaceuticals, to powering everything from electric cars to the offices, the lights on at the offices. So that's what we do, and we're very proud of what we do. It's a very difficult application. So we've surrounded ourselves with very smart, motivated folks here at Vulcan, and we've done really well. At about 5.5, 6 years ago, we were number 25 in our market, and now we're number 2. And we've done that through relentless pursuit of doing things the right way, both in how you treat your customers, your employees, and really all your stakeholders. And that's been a winning recipe here, and we've had a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you for that explanation. one of the things we talked about in our pre-interview has to do with exactly what you said in terms of, quote, strong executive presence, having strong executive presence with customers, suppliers, and all stakeholders. Talk to us about what that means. What does that look like? If I were, Simon, if I were a video camera, and I'm walking down the halls in your organization, I can't say anything, I'm just hearing and capturing. What would I be hearing and what would I be capturing?
Well, let's talk about the office here. Here is the Houston office is our headquarters, and here we have design engineering, finance, supply chain, and executive functions. So we've got about 30 employees here. Often just walk the halls, and I really believe in open door policy. So pretty much unless somebody's having a meeting in their office, we prefer for the doors to be open so we can have the hallway discussions. And in the hallway discussions, an executive is often kind of drawing out maybe issues, problems, challenges, and also just general conversation about family and what you do over the weekend. All of that is what an executive, I think, can impact an organization in the most positive way. So it's really about being there, being present. Don't have your door closed unless there's a need to have your door closed. And in fact, in my office, I've done a couple of things by design. I actually have a big, giant fish tank, and people come in and look at the fish. So they may not want to talk to me, but they like to look at the fish. And I appreciate the fish as well, but the whole idea is to draw folks in so we can have a conversation. I've got a couch here, chair, it's very comfortable. We've got a great view of the Galleria area here in Houston. As you can see, I think you can see it in the background. But,
Yes.
It's about being approachable. And then when you're seeing customers, you have to bring value at every conversation. It can't just be, hey, how are you doing? It's like you're kind of probing a customer and trying to figure out what problems you can solve for them and how you can become relevant. And that's really what we did here at Vulcan is we went about what's called a voice of the customer process. And that's drawing out information from the customer about their pain points, their challenges. And then you get your engineering team and your problem solvers, and you come and you develop great solutions for them. And that's been definitely a winning formula for us. And then one thing I think some companies get wrong is they don't treat their suppliers as supplier partners. And I think that's a real miss because your suppliers are mission critical for you, just like your employees and your customers. We're all in this together. And I think when you really work with customers and you're as transparent as you can be with suppliers, I think it really helps develop this larger team of problem solvers as opposed to just one or two individuals. So it's about the collective. And being an executive, you've got to be also very, very willing to hear bad news as well, and take responsibility for your organization. If we make a mistake, we mess up, you got to own it. And oftentimes, human nature is to kind of get defensive when somebody's calling your baby ugly or your team didn't do the right thing, and you just gotta be even keeled and listen carefully, process, and commit to positive change, and then you got to follow through and do it. That's what an executive really. That's what executive presence really is to me.
That's very well said. You said something to me that I will always remember because I thought it was very bold and says something about belief in yourself. You said, I've always had an aptitude for leadership. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it depends on how far back you want to go, right?
Way back, I was
think,
born.
yeah. Well, when I was a teenager, I was, I think I mentioned to you when I went to college, I was actually a music major at first, and I changed my major
And
relatively
what
quickly.
instrument, Simon? Sorry to interrupt. What instrument was it?
Oh, guitar and trumpet. Also sang a little bit, but it was really guitar and trumpet. And so I was in marching band, and I was in jazz band, and all these other,
How fun.
fun activities. And I always ended up being, first chair and kind of leading, a small band of brothers, if you will, as we performed and everything. And I just always enjoyed that. And my dad always called me bossy, tongue in cheek. I ended up being a boss, but so I guess it's kind of, to some degree, it was innate. I was very comfortable with that. And then, even I think back in college, when we'd have a team project or something, I always enjoyed those. And I felt like I was leading a lot of those efforts. And then when I joined the workforce, I joined my parents' company. Right out of college, we had a small machining company up in Seattle, and it was just my mom, my dad, me, and another guy. And I just ended up really enjoying the selling process, because I sold our machining services, as well as figuring out how to make parts, how to price parts, how to really engage and be a problem solver early on. And then as we grew that company, I ended up ultimately being general manager. We had a couple of different locations, and we ended up selling that. And my parents retired a long time ago now. I guess it was in the year 2000, maybe 2001. So it was a great experience, real broad-based experience where leading others just kind of, I was pretty comfortable with that.
You mentioned sales, and I know that you were in sales for a long time. Do you think, Simon, that sales is a skill, if you're good at it, that can catapult you faster, differently, into high leadership positions like you're in?
Well, if you really think about leadership, and I do a lot, a tremendous amount of it is selling internally as well as externally. And what I mean by that is, if you have an initiative in the company, you got to sell that initiative. And the executive, if he isn't authentic, he or she, isn't authentic about what it is that they're trying to accomplish with the initiative, that comes through pretty quickly. And the selling process of your ideas is mission critical. Otherwise, the initiatives die. And I've spent probably pretty much my whole career in some form or fashion in sales, but I consider myself, an operational executive as much as anything. But sales makes you uncomfortable. Sales is oftentimes having to deal with rejection and having to, put a brave face on when, you really think you have a great solution for a customer, and, at the end of the day, they decide otherwise. That can be difficult. And all of that, I think, is polish that you need. You're kind of polishing that rough stone. These experiences are all building towards, not necessarily the end product, meaning where you're at today, but, because ultimately we're constantly working on our personal, brand, if you will, or our personal executive presence all the way through our career. So I'm still not done learning, that's for sure. I'd like to think I've got quite a few more years left to learn and accomplish and grow.
Well, and thank you for saying you're always learning. I think the day that someone feels like they know it all could pop up a little arrogance. What do you think about that? Yeah,
that'll get you in trouble every time, for crying out loud. Yeah, I think I think as soon as you say to yourself, "I got this figured out," watch out.
Watch out.
Something's gonna happen.
Well, let's go to something that you're really proud of. I'll call it your greatest accomplishment or your greatest win, or even personally, something you just really hold and say, "Gosh, I'm so glad that happened." What might that be?
Gosh, there's lots of stuff. I'm so glad that they happened, but I guess it starts out with, I think I made a great decision in joining my parents' company when I was 22, and being humble enough to, it's hard to work for your mom and dad. It's not easy. There's that family emotion. They know you deeply. They know your hot buttons. I know their hot buttons. But I always had such great respect for my mom and dad. Immigrants. They came over with nothing and started this company in our garage at home. And there was just always something innately impressive about both of them. And I grew I think I worked after college. I worked there for probably 14 years before we sold. And I just grew into the man I've become. And I give my mom and dad every bit of credit for that.
That's so nice. We would all hope that our children say things like that about the goodness, not anything that they think about as the badness. It comes with both, I know. My kids talk about spanking. No, I never really spanked them. But I did have harsh words.
Yes.
Thinking back on that, it wasn't really harsh words. It was just a look. And I didn't have to go any further.
Yeah, right.
When you talk about leadership, let's go to the other side of it and talk about a bad leader. What do you do, Simon? And did you ever have, I'll just say, a bad boss? There's so many articles written about that. So, A, did you ever have one? And if so, how do you handle it? What would you say to advise people?
Yeah, I've had a couple. And I guess first and foremost, one of the things I think I've done well is I've tried to learn from even those experiences, as opposed to closing them off and saying, that was really crummy. That was a bad situation.
Yeah.
Because there is value in kind of navigating through that, because ultimately you're going to find toxic people in leadership roles. And how do you navigate that? I think of one boss in particular. Volatile personality would be the best way to describe this guy. You didn't know what you were going to get one day over another. And I was in a pretty high position of authority, not at the president level yet, but so I had a lot of responsibility. And this guy would come in and he would make assumptions that were not grounded in reality. And as opposed to discussing it with me or some of the other execs, he would just say, this is the reality, which, is often wrong. And that volatility, you didn't know if he was going to be yelling, screaming, slamming his hands on the table or whatever it was. Ultimately, this person ends up unapproachable. And so you can't collaborate, you can't work together, and it drives people away. And people leave companies often because of bad leadership, and they don't connect with their boss, or their boss isn't providing them coaching, mentoring, or optimism, if you will. Oftentimes all these things sounds great, but you also have to correct. And I think employees appreciate a boss who, is fair when it comes to both reward and, in areas where a person needs to improve. And so a bad boss, I could see this guy, still in my head, it was a long time ago, just pounding the table with his hands and kind of yelling and just being irrational. And this was a big guy too. So took up a lot of space, both in volume. It just took a lot of volume out of the room. And it was just a lot of fun. And ultimately I left. He was the primary driver, as well as there was a better opportunity. So it was easy to say, I'm out of here.
Well, well said. That goes to one of your top takeaways that you shared when you said leave toxic relationships and companies. And
yes.
If you can.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, don't leave when you're really pissed off. Don't make that decision. Make it rationally based on as objective information that you can gather. Be careful not to be emotional about those decisions. They need to be what's best for you and your family and your situation, and then leave. Don't just leave because you're mad or somebody hurt your feelings. That's going to happen. That's going to happen a fair amount. You've got to be patient, work through those things, learn from them. There's nuggets of value in pretty much every situation. So figuring out where those nuggets are, I think, are important. And also, I think a couple of the best decisions I ever made was leaving a toxic situation behind, whether it be personal or professional. Yeah. It's just, life's too short, and you're a good up and coming executive. You have places to go to those places and knock it out of the park at the right spot.
And can I add to that, let it go mentally?
Absolutely.
Let it go. Move on. That's the hard part.
Excellent advice. Yeah.
Simon, what is going from positive just for a second negative, which is what mistake have you ever made that you look back on and go, oh, darn?
Yeah, I made so many.
Thank you for that. That's authentic.
Yeah, we all do, right?
Yes.
But,
yes.
I think it comes down to not leaving quick enough. The clock is ticking on your career and your life. Not to be kind of morbid about it, but don't hang around if it's not the right spot. And I think I hung around at one particular company probably a year and a half longer than I ought to have. And now everything worked out. I ended up where I'm at today, and I think maybe that wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have gotten here and enjoyed this, wonderful career that I've had. But nonetheless, I knew it was time to go, and I just kept thinking it would get better and better, and it never really does. And I guess that was one of the nuggets I learned.
Things may not change, so you make the change. I like that. Absolutely. Well, that leads to another thing we talked about, which is to have a career strategy. Simon, that's so important to people who are climbing the ladder of their success, whether it's entrepreneurial or in a company. So can you talk to us a little bit about career strategy?
Yeah, I'd always thought when I was younger, in my 20s, that I could lead a much larger organization if given the chance. Maybe that was young, ignorant arrogance on my part or not. But I did have this sense that I can do much more. And so when I talked a little bit about our family business, when we sold that, I purposely took a job selling capital equipment for this company up in Washington State, so that I could visit all kinds of different manufacturing companies. And my territory was Eastern Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Calgary. So
That's big.
Alberta. It was a gigantic territory, but I was exposed to so many interesting companies. One of the things I learned from that was The things that we were doing in our private company were pretty darn good. And so technically, I kind of had that part well figured out. But managerially, I had a lot to learn. And so I had this opportunity to work for Goodrich Aerospace up in Spokane, Washington. And I took that job, even though it was less pay than I was making as a sales engineer. I took that job because of the educational opportunities. I became a manufacturing manager, and at that company, they were very supportive of continuing education. So I learned Six Sigma. I learned a proper safety university. I learned all these different. I took every opportunity to further my education. They also paid for my MBA, which I took. And so here I am, a manager of a manufacturing arm. The next position in my head to get ultimately to president would be plant manager. So I would get more of a general management experience. And I was recruited to run a couple of plants in Houston, Texas. And that's how I ended up down here for a Fortune 500 company. And, that was the tough spot, in my career. That was a very difficult assignment. I think I talked to you a little bit about how I was recruited, and I was very excited to work for this guy. He showed me, they flew me down to Houston, showed me the plant. It was an absolute mess. They showed me another plant up in Wisconsin that was state of the art. They'd done a great job. And so my boss was saying, that's future state. Houston is current state. I'd like you to be part of the transformation. So I quit my job at Goodrich, which I loved. I loved living in Spokane. I sold my house, moved my family to Texas. I show up to work, and the first day I get there, my boss had been fired the week before.
Oh, God.
So I'm in a foreign land. I'm in Texas. I had never spent any time in Texas before. I didn't know the language, and it was really, really a frightening moment. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done to my family? Because my daughter was a freshman in high school, and my son was in sixth grade. So they're young, and this was middle of their school year. Uprooted everybody and moved down here. And thankfully, I had a great mentor show up miraculously. He was a president of one of their divisions, and he had spent some time in Houston before all his stock option had vested. So he and I hit it off. He became a fantastic mentor, and he really extended friendship and guidance when I needed it the most. I learned so much from Roland. His name's Roland Wright. Just a fantastic guy. And he was kind of my savior, if you will, because I didn't tell you, by the way, I was running two plants in Texas. And I also, 3 weeks into my job, they told me, oh, you have this other plant you're going to have to close down in North Carolina and consolidate it into Houston. You have to go tell 150 people they lost their jobs.
Oh,
so that,
no.
You talk about a firestorm of difficult scenarios all at once. And ultimately, I got through it, learned a lot, obviously. But that was kind of a bad company that does that to somebody. Yes. And I vowed never, ever to do that to somebody I recruit. I'm not going to leave somebody unsupported in the early part of their tenure at my company. So I go way out of my way to make sure, computers are ready, business cards are ready, a portfolio of information has been compiled so that they can get up to speed and productive, and really welcoming somebody. I think it's a really important job of an executive. And that's part of building a world-class team. Is the entire process, whether it be the recruiting process, all through the employment process, you've got to be consistently excellent at those things. And that'll build you an organization, because it's about the people, period.
It is so about people. So we didn't talk about this, but for 15 years during in my career, on the side, I always built my own company, but on the side I did contract work for a change management firm. And it was a wonderful opportunity. I was able to travel all over the world. That was a good thing. The only negative was oftentimes I was brought in with a merger or an acquisition or a reorg, or those times that it wasn't necessarily people that cared about anybody standing up in front of them talking about handling change. But the experience of being able to help, to your point, to help those people going through whatever it is. That's what leaders have to do. There's the good times and the bad times, which leads me to another thing I want you to talk about, which is how you hire good people. Simon, the leaders that I work with in executive coaching are all looking for good people, quote unquote. How do you hire those? How do you find them?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think that's been something I've done really well. It hasn't always been the case, but I think I've honed a process over time. It first starts, if you're looking for executives, you're most likely going to need to use some form of executive recruitment. Mm-hmm. And so I have a particular company that they understand exactly what I'm looking for culturally, because it's not so much about the skills, it's about that person. What do they actually bring? Do they have the DNA appropriate for our organization? And for us, we're looking for highly competitive people, people that are good to their core. That's really important to us. They're very intelligent. I want to be surrounded by smarter folks than myself. That's almost a requirement, right?
I like that.
And then they need to obviously fill a particular skill set that we're looking for as well. So my recruiting company understands those absolutes, and then they're able to, scour their networks and then find individuals who at least meet the core requirements. And so then what we have, we have a candidate or two that comes through that process. We'll do some initial phone discussions, and you really gauge everything from energy to intellect to experience in those conversations. And if that goes well, I usually do a couple of things. One may be a face-to-face, but it might be too early for that. I always do a Berkman assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with that tool.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Because that tool helps me understand how somebody's kind of wired, what their hot buttons might be, how they work in teams, how are they going to work with our team. I've done an extensive analysis on our entire organization, including myself, and how, if you're in a manager position or higher in our company, you've done a Berkman. And it's just a quick way to gauge compatibility organizationally and otherwise. So that tool helps a lot. And then we've hired so many high performers that I include them in the interview process, because this organization is self-selecting now. They do not want a passenger. They want a contributor.
Right.
And so they're pretty tough graders. And I think if you get through that, you can become a Vulcanite. And we're very proud of, who we are. Hopefully not too arrogant about it, but we've been able to accomplish great things because of our people, and our people selection process, I think, is a core to our success.
So, Simon, if people who are listening should be really excited about a company whose leader is someone like you, if they're interested in the organization, how would they get in touch with Vulcan, and are there opportunities still?
Yeah, we're always looking for talent. Just like all, I would say, ambitious companies, talent scarcity is a reality. So we have our website, VulcanIndustral.com. You can also email me directly at slawrie, SLEWRIE, at VulcanIndustrial.com and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about being a Vulcanite, and I'd be happy to guide you in that direction.
And that is in the banner under what you just said. So people, you can look at that if you're watching on YouTube, or you've just heard it if it's only on audio. Simon, I am thrilled with this interview with you and for making it so interesting in terms of what it really takes to be a leader. You know, just that true as you have been an example of caring about the people. It's all about the people, all the way up from janitor to where you are and up into the sky. So thank you for taking the time today. I know you're going on vacation tomorrow. Have a grand time and continued success.
Thanks, Valerie. I really appreciate being here. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. Much blessings.
And
before we leave, stay tuned. One more thing, if you can stay on, Simon, I always have a Valerieism, which is just a little philosophy, and it's a quick one. And it is all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And what I mean about that is always have something on the side that is not just work, work, work. What is your leisure time? What do you do during that? I want to hear your comments, audience. So make a comment. Send me an email, Valerie at valerieandcompany.com, or put it in the comments of this show. Maybe it's a craft. Maybe it's building something. Maybe it's reading. I don't know, but I'd like to know. So you do that for me, will you? And as always, the value of hitting that red button that says subscribe. Please do that if you enjoy these shows. Hit the subscribe button. And until next time, just enjoy life. That's it for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, ValerieandCompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.